YouTuber that I follow was talking about an incident, and he didn't understand the logic of it. The logic of, a man and a woman in a bar, and the woman behaved irrationally, but the guy got punished for it. It was pretty funny that he didn't see it, but, it's pretty funny if you're looking at it from the inside, but if you're taking a step back and looking at it from the outside, then it becomes perfectly clear. Let me explain. There was this man and a woman at a bar, okay, and they interacted somehow, and there was a little tiff, a little friction, which is, perfectly normal. Nothing really happened. Nothing really violent happened, right? The woman apparently tried to slap the guy. The guy pushed her away and just blew her off, and that was that. But the woman went and complained to the bouncer, as I understand the story, and, the bouncer kicked the guy out, even though he hadn't been the one to start it. And apparently it was pretty clear that he hadn't been the one to start it, right? And he hadn't really done anything other than push the woman away from him, which is perfectly reasonable if somebody's trying to hit you and you just push them away. I don't see the problem with that, but that's not the point. See, the man was kicked out of the bar, but the woman was allowed to remain. I mean, the bouncer, if you think about it, was acting like a total white knight. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And you probably noticed that there are a whole shitload of situations where not just the man in charge, but the institution acts like a white knight. I mean, it consistently and unequivocally sides on the side of women as opposed to men, right? There's a reason for that. Oh yeah, it's quite obvious. See, I always talk to you guys about how we're living in the period of the sexual market deregulation, right? There are basically no rules insofar as who can have sex with whom, right? So long as, the two people fancy each other, the two people are on the same size of the age of consent, and, and so far as there's willingness, any two people can have as much sex as they want. I mean, not any two people, anybody can have as much sex as they want, right? So this naturally leads to a situation where the top 20% of the men, if not less, have sexual access to the top 80% of the women. Or more to the point, the top 80% of the women are all chasing for the top tier of men. Right? And the bottom 80% of the men, right? They're left with nothing. Yeah, that's the nature of a deregulated marketplace. There are absolute winners and a very small minority of winners at that, and there is a huge majority of losers. And that's what's going on in the sexual marketplace, right? Now, what happens in such a situation? Well, it's quite obvious, see? The bottom 80% get resentful. Yeah, they get really fucking resentful. And of course, they start scrambling to figure out how they can become a part of that top 20%. Yeah. I mean, the men who are disenfranchised, if you will, from this sexual marketplace, they want to be a part of that top 20%, or if they can't be a part of that top 20%, they somehow want to have access to women. And so what's the easiest way for a man to get in the good graces of a woman? Pick her side. Obviously, that's the easiest way to get into the good graces of a woman. Pick her side. Say that she's right. And what do you think is the natural outcome of such a situation? 80% of the guys all of a sudden become white knights. Sure, that's what's going on. Yeah, because see, the bottom 80%, they are, of course, resentful of the top 20%, right? On the one hand, there's that going on. And on the other, they want to get in the good graces of women. And since they are not naturally sexually attractive, and probably, they haven't learned game, so they don't know how to sweet talk their way into a girl's pants, they figure that they'll use their authority, whatsoever that authority may be, to side with a woman and get in her good graces. And so that's what we're seeing. The bouncer at this bar, the people in charge of institutions, colleges and universities and what have you, people in corporate C-suites and all the rest of it, they are siding with women. They are white knighting for women because they're sexual marketplace losers who want to get into the good graces of women. And that's why this outbreak, this plague of white knights, it's all over the fucking place. You see what's going on? See, because this didn't happen before. Oh no, this is a recent event. This outbreak of white knightism, this plague of white knights, is because, see, these men are sexually disenfranchised. But back in the day, back in the regulated sexual marketplace, or in countries where a sexual marketplace is still regulated, mostly third world countries, well, what happened was that men were not sexually frustrated. Since they were not sexually frustrated, they had a much better sense of a lying woman. They weren't duped by lying women. They weren't duped by lying women, and they weren't going to be taken in by the tears, the crocodile tears, of some woman claiming to be a victim. Of course not. They were going to look at the evidence, look at the facts, look at the situation, and if they were in a position of authority, they'd mete out justice, dispassionately, because they were not sexually frustrated. You see? But now, of course, that's not the case. Now is it? Oh no. Now, 80% of single men, and a lot of the men who are married, right, they are sexually disenfranchised, right? They are sexually disenfranchised, they are sexually frustrated. They are romantically frustrated. And so because of it, whenever there is a woman around, they're going to side with the woman. It's going to be a natural outcome of that sexual and romantic frustration. Add to that, of course, the resentment, whether conscious or not, towards the top tier of men who just get all the pussy that they want. So it's going to be a double whammy. They're going to want to get in the good graces of women, and therefore they will side with them. And on the other hand, they will want to punish sexually successful men. And what does this lead to? It leads to injustices. Awful injustices. Injustices at the bar situation that I was talking about, where the guy got kicked out, but the woman was allowed to remain at the bar, which is trivial, of course, but much more important injustices, such as, for instance, giving credence to this the woman who accused Justice Kavanaugh of sexual impropriety 35 fucking years ago. It was all bullshit. It was obvious bullshit, but people gave that story credence. Why did they give it credence? Because so many of the men are sexually frustrated. And it's not just, some bar or some court appointee. It's everywhere. And we see it most especially in universities. The corporate environment, we're even starting to see it in the courts. And notice what happens to women when a woman and a man are charged and convicted of the same crime. A woman is going to serve far less time than a man. And here's the kicker. See, if you start looking at the statistics, and I did a cursory look on Google, see, the percentage of a sentence that a woman serves has been decreasing over time. If a man serves 100% of the sentence, the woman serves 50%, 40, 30%, and that trend is going down over time. What does that mean? What does that tell you? It tells you that during this period, we are experiencing and seeing more white knightism. And we're seeing it in the courts. Don't take my word for it. Go look it up for yourself. It's not that fucking hard to find, okay? We're seeing this. We're seeing this, and, that means that if you're a guy who's sexually successful, well, you're going to have to fucking deal with these fucking white knights now, aren't you? You're going to have to deal with these fuckers and realize what's going on, or realize their motivation. And their motivation is a combination of resentment towards you because you presumably are sexually successful, or at least not as sexually unsuccessful as they are. And also a desire to get in the good graces of women, and thereby hope that way they will be able to get some sort of sexual opportunity. You have to understand what's going on in order to short-circuit this process so that it doesn't hurt you. Yeah, because see, these white knights, they're in positions of authority, right? Authority over you. Or perhaps not authority directly over you. They're not perhaps your boss, but they can certainly make your life miserable. Like, say, some HR person, or say, some security guy or something like that. They can make your life a fucking misery, and they can potentially ruin your life, right? So you got to get ahead of the situation. You have to understand the dynamics of it. You have to understand that these people in authority who are white knights, they want to hurt you. It's their resentment of you and their desire to get in the good graces of women. And so if you're smart, what you do is you avoid these white knights. You avoid them, or at least try to manage them so that they don't hurt you, right? Because if you get in their way, they're going to hurt you badly. Look, beyond that, I don't have anything to tell you about this, any kind of, a pragmatic thing to do about this situation. I just found it really interesting to consider this, because it's a notion that sort of like popped into my head, and the more I examine it, the more accurate it seems to be. Yeah. And I've seen it all over the fucking place, right? And it's kind of funny that I didn't quite notice it before, the origins of this plague of white knights, right? I hadn't really connected it because, see, I remember when I was young, there weren't that many white knights. There weren't, not at all. I mean, there were guys who were gentlemanly and they were solicitous of women, sure, in a kind of like chivalrous way. But when it got serious, when it got important, they weren't going to side automatically with a woman. Oh no. And they were smart enough and honest enough to look at things as they actually were and render an honest judgment. But that's no longer the case. And I'm wondering, and this is just spitballing on my part here, but I'm wondering if a lot of the injustices that we're seeing in our contemporary society, injustices that 20, 30, 40 years ago just did not exist. I wonder if a lot of the injustices that we are seeing today in our contemporary society have their origin in these gelded white knights looking to curry favor from milady. Huh? I wonder if a lot of the injustice that we are seeing now in our contemporary society is a product of resentment of the sexually more successful and a desire to curry favor with women who will never pay attention to these men. Huh? That's a thought. Yeah. Okay, catch you later.